What's going on, folks? Today we're going to repot an orchid. You can see we've got some really nice blooms on here. We got another bud that's about to pop. Can't wait for that. That thing has just grown enormously since the video of the repotting. So luckily, we didn't lose any of the flowers after the repotting. Everything's looking good. We got a couple of new buds about to pop. We got some new root growth going on down in here. Looking great, just watered. Got another new root here. Oh yeah, look at that. And you can see here that we got some excellent roots going on in the media down here. So you can see that the flower is, or the spike is leaning over a little bit, but you know what? That just happens because oh my gosh. Alright folks, so we got a bit of a freak rainstorm going on out here, but you know what? The orchid loves it, and so do I. Like I said, everything's looking good in here. We've got new roots, got a flower about to pop. Everything's looking great. So generally you want to repot a new orchid that you get from the store. They're going to be packed for shipping in the media, so it's not really ideal for them. You're going to want to unpack. They're going to be really tightly packed in sphagnum most of the time. So that's why you're going to want to repot it. So as long as you're careful, I think that you won't have a problem. Before we get on with the repotting of this beautiful orchid, I want to ask you a couple of questions. Do you use sphagnum moss in your orchid potting mix? What type of media do you use to pot your orchids in? So I use a Better Grow orchid fertilizer normally on this. Sometimes I'll just use a 20-20-20 like standard fertilizer, depending on what I've got around at the time. What kind of fertilizer do you use on your orchids? So I'm about to repot this guy. Let me know if you have any suggestions about things I could change, or things that maybe you do differently. So I'd love to hear your thoughts. Alright, what I got for you today is an orchid. We're going to be repotting this. This recently came from the store. It's a little beat up. So even though this guy's in bloom, we're going to repot it. Bring it up for a close-up here. Very nice, beautiful flowers. So fully in bloom, but we are going to repot it. Let's do it as a test, see what happens. So I've said before that you are at a chance of losing the blooms. So hopefully that won't happen. I am going to use a little bit of sphagnum moss. I've got some sphagnum moss hydrating here. I'm going to do this repot a little bit different from the last one I did. So let's get started. I did pull this out and give it some water because it was super dry. I've had this home for a few days. And let's see, oh yeah, pulled right out of the pot. So we'll just pull this guy right out of here. So there's a little plastic pot inside of this container, marble clay. Interesting to note that it does have a drainage hole. Whoops. A lot of times those decorative containers from the store don't have a drainage hole, and I guess that's probably why this guy was so dry. So let's see if we can. Good looking roots, lots of roots. Happy with that. Little dead root there, we'll remove that. Okay, so it's packed quite tightly in here. And I just have a chopstick that I'm using to try and break some of this free. I don't want to damage any of the roots if possible. So it looks like it's coming out of there pretty nicely. It doesn't look like there's any roots in the middle of the sphagnum. So yeah, there's some dried up roots on here that we'll have to trim up. There's a root in there. Alright. Okay, now we're making some progress. So some pretty nice roots, though, all in all. Everything's said and done. Pretty happy with the state of these roots so far. I'm not sure if I thought it would be easier to get this sphagnum out if it was wet. I'm kind of thinking this seems like it may have been easier if it was dry. Oops. So yeah, there's some roots in the middle of the moss here. Oops. I just broke some off though. I'm not happy about that. Gosh, out of all the couple orchids that I have, this probably has the most roots out of all of them. I am going to get this moss cleaned up. I'll be right back. Okay, so I got some scissors I'm going to use to clean up the dead pieces of root. I am going to rub a little alcohol on here. Now I've heard you should actually soak these, but I don't really want to waste the rubbing alcohol, and I've never really had a problem with it, so I'm just going to use these alcohol pads. It's something we have around and we don't really use them, so I'll just use these up for this purpose. Alright, so let's take some of this dead stuff off here. I think we'll take Okay, so here we go. So I'm going to take this off up to here. And I'm going to take this one off up to here. So that one has a bit of a break, but the rest of the root is really healthy, so I'm going to leave it. This one's dead. So any of them like this that are really papery and or mushy, this one's papery just because it's been dry for so long. So cut that off. Not a lot to take off here. This is in great shape. I'm happy. Now there is some dry stuff up around the crown here. but it's just dry and then it goes back to green. So the root is alive, it's just the outside part of the sheath of the root that's looks like it's dead. So we'll take this little chunk off, that out of there. Take this dried up piece off. Alright, so now there is, whoa. So there is a small leaf here that's pretty beat up, but I'm just going to let that fall off on its own. I'll take this off. This little dry piece right here. Just trying to just sort some of these roots out a little bit, just to make it a little easier to replant. Okay. Put some water in here and give them a soak. Just have some filtered water here. I'm just gonna wash these roots off. A little soak. Alright, so I have an orchid mix here that I'm going to be using. It's a coarse mix. Like I said, I'm also going to use a little sphagnum moss this time. I saw Brad from Brad's greenhouse adds this to his mix. Now, I am going to spray a little fungicide on here. Okay, so this is going to be the pot that I'm using. You can see it's got pretty nice drainage holes, very well aerated. Use this mix that's got charcoal, coarse perlite, fir bark. I'm just going to fill the bottom of the container up. About like that. A little less. Like that. Now let's see how this is going to look in here. This is the biggest pot that I have, so this is going to have to do. I missed a root here, a little rotty looking root. Some of this. Okay, that's ended up blowing off. Try and get some of this bark down in there. Get the larger chips in there. So I'm just mainly using the sphagnum up toward the top because that's, you know, that's where it dries out the quickest. So I feel like that's gonna help me keep the moisture more even for longer in the pot. So we'll see. I didn't do this on my last one, on my last repot. Okay, so I want to pull this up just a little bit. I feel like I'm just a little deep in there, and kind of work some of this media down in there a little bit. So I'm trying to keep the sphagnum away from the crown area. Now, it doesn't need to be packed really tightly, but you know, it is going to help it and, be secured in the pot a little bit more. Okay, so I'm gonna pull the sphagnum. I got a little bit of chunks of sphagnum down in the crown here. Try and get those out the best I can. Okay, well there we have it. As you can see, there's some nice looking roots in here. Didn't get all of them in, but the ones that were already out of the pot, I mean, you don't really want those under the media anyway, so Some of the leaves, I mean, you can see it's been it got beat up in the store. Like this one has a crack in it. The tips are a little rough, but so it looks good. So I am not going to water it for a day or two just because I did cut some roots off and I don't want it to be super wet. That sphagnum was wet or moist. I did wring it out, so there's a little bit of humidity in there. In a few days I'll give it a good watering, but I'm just gonna let it rest for now. Should be good. I'll give you one last look. And there you have it. So, well, I'll put this over with the other orchids, and thanks for sticking with me through this one. Hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next video.